I've been thinking a lot about what it really means to change. I mean, not just changing a habit, but changing the actual wiring of our thoughts. And it led me to a question, one that sort of flips a common idea on its head. So let's just explore that for a minute.
See what that does? It changes everything. It moves the conversation from some kind of passive cure to, well, to an active opportunity. And this whole idea, it's actually rooted in one of the most powerful things our brains can do.
All right, so to really dig into this, we need to talk about the basic machinery. The system our brain uses to make any change at all. And that system has a name.
And here it is, neuroplasticity. This is the whole ballgame. It basically means your brain isn't some fixed piece of hardware you're stuck with. Nope, it's more like living clay. Everything you do, everything you think, your whole environment, it's all constantly reshaping the physical structure of your brain. It's the engine behind all learning, all memory, all change.
Okay, so what happens when that engine stalls? When that ability to change just breaks down? Well, for a lot of people, it feels like being trapped. You know that feeling? Just completely, utterly stuck.
And this is where things get really interesting. This perspective suggests that maybe depression isn't just a chemical thing, but a structural one. A problem where the brain's ability to adapt, to build new roads, just gets blocked.
So there's a scientific term for this feeling of being stuck: impaired cognitive flexibility. All that really means is that our thoughts get rigid. They get stuck in these deep ruts, these negative patterns, and we just can't seem to shift gears or see things any other way.
But forget the science for a second. What does that feel like? It feels like your brain is just on this one single narrow track. It's not that you can't think, it's that you can only think the same thing over and over and over again.
Okay, so if the problem is a brain that's become too rigid, how could a pill possibly help? Well, the answer seems to have less to do with some immediate chemical mood lift and a lot more to do with a slow, physical process of reconstruction.
And that brings us to this little protein called BDNF. The easiest way to think about it, it's literally like fertilizer for your brain cells. It helps them grow, survive, and build new connections. And a lot of the research suggests that antidepressants work by slowly, gradually telling the brain to make more of this stuff. But here's the absolute key. It's not a light switch. It's a really slow build. It can take weeks just for those BDNF levels to rise enough for new connections to even start forming. And, this slow biological process, it might be exactly why these medications don't work overnight.
So this really changes the whole story, doesn't it? We're moving away from this old idea of a simple chemical lift, like a quick boost, and we're moving toward a new idea, a physical rewiring. The pill isn't just tweaking some levels, it's creating the right conditions for the brain to literally start rebuilding itself.
And this is where the whole thing takes a really fascinating turn. Because if the drug is just preparing the soil, just laying the groundwork, what or who is guiding the actual construction?
Well, some research points to this wild idea that these SSRIs can actually reopen what's called a critical period of plasticity. It's almost like they can make an adult brain temporarily more flexible, more sensitive to its environment, kind of like a young brain is when it's learning everything for the first time.
Maybe the best way to picture it is this. The medication doesn't make the change happen. It just opens a window. That's it. It just creates an opportunity, a moment in time for change to become possible. But if the pill just opens the window, what actually directs the change that follows? If the drug isn't in the driver's seat, then who is?
Well, we are. Our experiences are. The drug might make the brain fertile ground, but it's things like therapy, building new habits, learning something new. Heck, life itself. That's what provides the actual blueprint for the new wiring. The brain builds new connections around whatever we feed it during that open window.
So where does all of this leave us? It brings us right back to that question we started with, doesn't it? Only now, we have a little more insight into what might actually be going on under the hood.
It seems pretty clear the drug itself isn't the answer. I mean, there's no happiness or courage chemically encoded in the pill, right?
What it does is act as a catalyst. It loosens up those rigid, worn-out tracks in the brain. It provides the raw material so that new pathways can be built. It makes it possible for our own efforts to finally, actually take root.
And that really just leaves us with one final and maybe more personal question. If your brain was suddenly given that chance to rewire itself,
If that window is open for you, what new paths would you want it to form?
I don't have an answer for that. But the question, it just feels worth asking. Just a penny for thought.